Okay, guys, we are officially live.
Oh,
Welcome to Blockchain Banter Live. I'm Jen, I'm your host. I am here with 21 from Podchain and Dr. Mark Richardson from Bancor and Carbon DeFi. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's been a while since I've been able to have one of these just kind of like shoot the shit DeFi discussion sort of calls, and I miss them. So I'm really happy to have you guys joining me for my first one back in a little while. You know, we've been focusing on the trading calls, Mark. So this is a nice change of pace for us. I'm going to start, by asking you guys to just really introduce yourselves, to any of our viewers who may be unfamiliar. 21, I'll start with you. Give us a little bit of who you are, how you kind of got into the industry. Tell us about yourself.
sure. So I got into crypto, I would say blockchain, but it was more so crypto around 2017 or 18. And I think it was basically like everyone else. I heard about, Dogecoin, a little bit about Ethereum. So we were I had a Robinhood app. I was basically just buying through that, buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum for like 500-600 bucks a pop, way back when.
Those
So
were the days, right?
I actually have some screenshots of those price histories, and I like to hang them on my wall sometimes. But yeah, so it started back then with the blue chips, like everybody else. I actually didn't delve or dive into DeFi until 2021. I actually won my first NFT on Halloween 2021, and that's whenever I downloaded MetaMask. And the guy was like, "Yeah, I need you to download MetaMask," and I had just never used it in my geographical region. It was not allowed, so
Oh,
wasn't able to
interesting.
really
Okay.
right. So it came after the fact. So I used it for an NFT first, and then I was actually able to send and receive crypto on it. So that was really, really cool. But that's how I got into DeFi, was basically through that NFT. I had a few
That's
collections.
interesting.
Yeah, I had a few
Yeah.
collections minted out like a few months later. I was a big NFT head in the beginning. I started off going after scammers and people who were just taking advantage of people, newbies in the space and stuff like that. And that led me to being here with the Pulse team.
That's awesome. That's really cool that you went from NFTs to DeFi to calling people out,
Yeah.
especially being new in that specific area yourself,
Well, if you remember
right?
2021, it was really compartmentalized. There was a whole
Yes.
lot of compartmentalization. So, if you had someone from a different community that maybe commented on your community's post, you maybe saw that as a threat, and that was definitely my frame of mind back then. So, it's definitely come 180 degrees, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So it's cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And Mark, would you introduce yourself for us as well?
Certainly. My name is Mark Richardson. I'm the project lead at Bangkok. I think my interest in cryptocurrency and blockchain began when I saw a YouTube video by a YouTuber named Meme Molly for a channel called Rocket Boom back in 2010. And this is the same day that I think I got all of my bank cards frozen by my bank for trying to buy Bitcoin online, and it was a different time. It was not as straightforward as it is today. Um, I was a research scientist before entering into blockchain. So 2010, when I was watching that Bitcoin video, is when I was in my honors year at Macquarie University. I did my PhD at the University of Melbourne, my postdoc at UCI, and I was in my second postdoc for the Australian government in 2020 when the country shut down due to COVID. And it was when I was at home with not much to do that I discovered DeFi and Ethereum and started contributing to various DAOs. Eventually picked up a full-time contract with Bancor, first as a researcher, then as the head of research, then the product architect, and now the project lead.
Amazing. Thank you. So, guys, I wanted to ask you, and if there's anything really quickly, I have my own subject that I wanted to discuss, but these calls are really open. When I say they're unscripted, they are genuinely 100% unscripted. I come up with a topic, we can discuss it. But if there's something that's really, catching your interest or you want to discuss on the call, also something within blockchain, within DeFi, please feel free to bring that up as well. I do want to ask you a question. it's something that I've been kind of curious about, and something that I have, we might have discussed here and there a little bit, Mark. We might have even mentioned it on the trading call a little bit yesterday, and it was decentralization, and whether or not it really, not only does it matter anymore, do people really care anymore? Do people care if something is decentralized? And I think the people, projects, the builders, the developers, the blockchains, right? The users. I think we can break this down a little bit. Mark, maybe you can speak from the developer, the builder aspect about the decentralization. But I'm just curious in general. 21, you do marketing and growth and everything over at PodChain. What is what is the feeling that you guys are getting? Is it as big a thing as it was when blockchain first came around and it was decentralization?
It's definitely still a thing, but I don't know if it has the same ideals that when it first hit our space. I know now that it's used primarily as a buzzword and as an attention grabber. There's a lot of confusion around decentralization and projects who maybe take a different approach to it and things like that. There's a lot of confusion between where decentralization matters, whether it's with your team or your tokenomics or how your project is structured. So there's a lot of really just confusion around the word itself. There definitely needs to be teams and stuff like that. But I think that educating the public on the why decentralization is important to DeFi. I think that's kind of been lost along the way, and it probably wouldn't be a bad thing for projects to maybe reiterate it every now and then. I think.
So not only can it be, I mean, you're kind of saying that there are different ways that it can be applied to different aspects of
Right.
the industry. So there's no set definition. Am I kind of
I think the
saying that?
definition it came under was applicable to the tokenomics. People wanted decentralization to be sure that no one owned their crypto whenever, not your keys, not your crypto, right? It was introduced to us through the tokenomic side. But now you have projects that are wanting to be decentralized and going as far as using it as a method of advertisement. We are fully decentralized. Well, you're in a DeFi space. That's to be expected, right? I mean, that's if
Yeah.
you're building by technological standard. So it's kind of that's where it kind of I think that's where it kind of loses. Starts to become murky. Starts to become kind of diluted in a way.
Diluted is a good word for it. Mark, what are you thinking? I see you shaking your head a little bit as 21 is talking.
Not shaking my head necessarily.
Nodding in
I,
agreement or
yeah, I
yeah.
think um, certainly decentralization, the word, is wielded for marketing purposes probably more frequently than it should be. Um, when I joined this space properly, it was more of a tenet that I think that the blockchain community was rallying behind, remembering that this whole thing kicked off in 2008 with the Bitcoin blockchain and white paper, and was really sort of like a protest against government control. And so the decentralization aspect of it was necessary, I think, because it was something that was seen as, I guess, a little bit of a protest, or at least anti-authoritarian, and something that should exist separate from, centralized authorities. Today, people are applauding the U.S. government even talking about setting up a Bitcoin reserve. Like they're celebrating it as if the inclusion of official government agencies in blockchain and cryptocurrency is something that we've wanted all along. Which, in a way, it's the opposite of what we ever wanted, right? The idea was to exclude governments, not include them. Now, having said that, I'm not sure that necessarily does anything to speak to the erosion of decentralization in blockchains or Bitcoin specifically. Because when people talk about decentralization, I think that they're talking about two different things, and this is what 21 was referring to. There's the decentralization of the systems, and there's decentralization of the assets. or distribution of the assets, or what 21 was referring to as like decentralized tokenomics. I think people are generally a lot more focused on the decentralization of assets, because these are typically, very centralized assets. Like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to mention any projects specifically, but you don't have to, search very far to find projects that have had highly concentrated token supplies in the hands of, relatively few individuals, resulting in.
Well, you can look on bubble maps. It's
Exactly.
a great resource for it, right?
There are projects that have been spawned deliberately and specifically to address and detect, these kinds of things. So it's clearly a problem. But decentralization in systems is much more difficult to discuss and talk about. It's not something that has such a pronounced effect, right, on the well-being of blockchain users the same way that concentrated token supplies do. But in a way, it's probably a lot more important, and also something that threatens, I think, blockchain in a little bit more of a profound sense. So, for example, one of the things that I have frequently brought attention to is that as Bitcoin becomes more entrenched, right, in traditional financial systems, as it becomes seen more and more as a accepted store of value, or anything else, any other label you want to attach to it. As its price continues to go up, competition between miners becomes more and more catastrophic. And even back in 2020, we were down to something like 3 mining pools that were really controlling most of the Bitcoin network, which, to my judgment, isn't particularly decentralized. Now, we assume that these 3 mining pools aren't colluding with each other, and I don't think we have any good reason to think that they are colluding with each other. But there's still a trust element there, right? It's something that's very difficult to verify, and that kind of goes against the Bitcoin ethos of, you have to verify everything and not trust anything. And I think that as it becomes more and more of an important asset in the global economy, it's likely that it's going to continue to become more and more centralized. This is something you need to actually, fight to maintain decentralization in. And Ethereum's going the same way. Ethereum began even more decentralized, at least when I joined the space, was comparably or slightly more decentralized than Bitcoin was. And today, Liter has something like 2/3 of the stake on.
Do they still?
Something like that. I haven't really kept up with it, but it's
a third.
It's definitely a lot. And when asked to limit their influence, they refused. This is a significant issue, and calling Ethereum decentralized today, I think might be just a stone's toss too far. And yeah, so I think on top of the concentration of tokens in the hands of relatively few individuals, which has immediate and devastating impacts for people that are trying to speculate on those things. The decentralization of the systems is probably the thing that's harder to articulate, more invisible, and potentially even more dangerous, because it affects like everything on the chain rather than like one specific asset. But yeah, I do see decentralization eroding away, and it's sad to see.
Do you think the actual? Oh, go ahead, 21. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say absolutely great points. I like the one that he made about the whenever the governments get involved, it's going to circle back around to traditional finance if we're letting them. I mean, that's absolutely a great point. We're going in a circle here. If we let, or not if we let, but if like you said, if it's not going to replace traditional finance, then it becomes traditional finance. Where do we draw the line? And like you said, we've been asking for this song and dance for regulation and mass adoption, but we've yet to even scratch the data side of blockchain. It's all been monetary, payments being accepted basically, and how to transfer assets back and forth through traditional finance. So it's we definitely have some work to do for sure. But great points though. I really did like that.
Mark, you said something similar about the ETFs as well. I remember that was really something that we were
Yeah.
welcoming, and something I mean, the same point to that same extent. We
It's a
had a comment
double-edged sword
here.
as well.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a double-edged sword because as uh, I don't think it is controversial to state that Bitcoin is becoming more of a traditional commodity or viewed that way. We're not there yet, but it certainly seems en route that way. We've got the ETF. The American president is talking about establishing like I said, a strategic reserve of it. It's being spoken in it's being spoken in the same terms that Bitcoiners back in 2019, 2020 were, but this time by politicians. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird. It reminds me a little bit of, the trajectory of superstars like Eminem, who started out so counterculture and, anti-pop in every way, only to become everything he hated, to become sort of the poster child for popular culture. And Bitcoin is doing exactly the same thing, right? It was meant to be this kind of, I don't want to say anarchistic, but a little bit
In a
anarchistic,
way, yeah.
right? View of finance, and has just become a part of regular finance. You do get some benefit from straddling that, from straddling that dichotomy. The first one is that Bitcoin still has some way to go in terms of like the fees generated on its layer one, being able to like supplant the block rewards, because as the block rewards continue to diminish according to Bitcoin's emissions profile, then there needs to be sufficient financial incentive for people to maintain the blockchain. And there's always this threat, right, that if the Bitcoin price drops too far, that it will no longer make financial sense for people to keep those miners on, and we could lose an enormous amount of hash power. And if that happens, it becomes, at least theoretically, more easy to 51% attack the network. We've seen 51% attacks before, not on Bitcoin, but on similar proof of work systems. Whereas if you've got an ETF riding on it and you do have a government with a strategic reserve of that asset, it's probable, or at least it's not unreasonable to assert, that they will probably commit hash power to the network in order to maintain its security. Whereas, when we leave it entirely to ourselves, based on, economic game theory to secure these things, it might not last forever. So there is a trade-off there. I think it has lost a little bit of its soul, becoming, absorbed into the traditional financial infrastructure, but it gets something for it as well. So it's not all, it's not just a sad story.
I mean, we're seeing decentralization being somewhat diluted, right? Like we kind of said, and Mark, you said that it's kind of a sad thing. It's unfortunate, right? What do you think the industry is then focused on? If in some ways the decentralization matters less or isn't the focus that it once was, where do you guys see that having shifted to?
I've spoken a lot. I'm happy to let 21 have the stage for a
Okay.
little.
Yeah, I'll take it. That's a really good question too, and I really do like it. I'm gonna say, that we're leaning towards learning how to work together. We've been chasing whenever the premise of Web3 came out, it put the power back in the hands of the people. That was the whole introduction of Web3. It was all about the creators connecting, building bridges from community to community, basically. That's how I like to say it. So for a long time, we had things like fragmented liquidity. We had things like fragmented communities, fragmented blockchains. Now we're starting to work together. It's not so much what we can do with the other people. I like to think we're starting to realize you've got things like RWAs. You got a lot of things happening with the data application side. So I'd like to think that there's some realization to this unpolished gem we have, which is the data side of blockchain. We don't ever hear a lot about, being able to work together from chain to chain, and just in the Web3 space, there is a lot of dynamic to it. And I really think that the interoperability has taken a really big focus because we're learning to we're not inventing the wheel. We're just putting the wheel on the automobile and making it work in a new way, right? We're not inventing blockchain. We're just making it work together for once. We're working with the people around us instead of trying
More of the
to
collaboration.
exactly, instead of looking for that outside validation from, say, mass adoption on the monetary side. We have things that, if you could go as far as, and I'll just go out on a limb here, but we sit down every day, we type in smart addresses to a scanner. You have another thing called SQL, structured query language, that is absolutely a vital tool in everyday computation life, right? It's it to me it rivals that, and we've yet to scratch that. So we've got a little bit of some data application that we've yet to realize that I really think is going to be bullish, not on anything but blockchain as a whole. And I hope that that's where the focus goes. But I really do start to see some. I really have begun to see some focus there and some lighting of matches underneath that torch. And I'm hoping that it continues for us to be able to build together. It'd be really cool to
Nice.
see what we can all do together. We've been screaming mass adoption as 5% that we are early, and we've been yelling at each other in crypto Twitter for the past 5-10 years. Basically, that's what we do. But I would love everyone to come together and scream
Yeah.
blockchain to see how much noise we can actually make. I really,
When it's not like that sort of toxic, sort
yes,
of, I mean, it can
and
get
just
toxic
push
sometimes,
push the
you know?
application of the blockchain forward together. I really feel like if we can do that, that would be absolutely just imperative to our survival. And I really am bullish on that. It's really going to be cool to see what we can build together. As for once, as opposed to trying to build it. And but whenever you go to GitHub, it's all copy and pasta. Everyone's building the same thing, but we just all want to be first. So if we just take a step back, realize that we have this beautiful thing of blockchain, and we can actually do more with it, I think it's going to be really cool.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Um, I think there's things that the consumers of blockchain, I think, are sort of demanding or expecting, and then there's the things that the developers in blockchains would prefer to focus on or are focusing on. For example, the ZK technology has come a long way, but it's still unfinished. And I think that I said it 2 years ago, and I am still convinced that there probably will be a Nobel Prize awarded for ZK stuff at some point in the future, as it relates specifically to blockchain security. We're also seeing, for example, the Ethereum layer 2 landscape really, I think, sort of first wrestle with its identity and structure. One of the things I pointed out recently, actually on the trading call with Jen just yesterday, is that the inflationary mechanics that were brought in at the Shanghai fork have all been reversed now because Ethereum has been prioritizing low gas costs for its layer 2 infrastructure. And so I think that developers in and around Ethereum, including the people that are building out its layer 2s, I probably need to think a little bit about what the how they're incentivizing the validators on Ethereum layer 1, right, which is necessary for all of these layer 2s to remain secure and have any asset or any transaction verified on any of its layer 2s on any of the other layer 2s. This is something that Vitalik was speaking about at DevCon last year. But yeah, I think that what I'm trying to say is that there's a very strong need for more infrastructure focus on blockchain in general. I think I was critical of the layer 2 idea when Ethereum started to roll it out, but I think everyone had to concede the point that compared to a sharded network, which was at the time a pipe dream, and today is probably not a pipe dream. We've seen blockchains like Shardium and so on take up the mantle and really run with it. But even then, those blockchains have encountered the sort of issues with the complexity that you get with a sharded network. And so I think that the layer 2 decision was the pragmatic one, made at the right time in Ethereum's evolution. But now that we have it, I think that, we're like that dog that was chasing the tire and finally caught it, and now we're trying to work out what to do with it. So I think there is some, not just the economics, but also the politics surrounding Ethereum's layer 2 infrastructure that needs to be sorted out. We're seeing that even within the Ethereum Foundation, seems to be a political turnover, discussions about leadership and other things. And then with all of that going on amongst the developer community, you then have, consumers demanding the things that they always do, which is, they want extremely high leverage for basically for free, right? They want airdrops, they want liquidity mining rewards, they want, they want
Every single
access
possible
to,
way for you to pay me to
yeah.
use your
I mean,
product, and
I've said it many times before, sometimes in, polite discussion, sometimes in arguments, that from where I'm standing, the 99% of the demand in DeFi is for people to be made rich magically, right? Somehow, like that's really what the demand is. And so when you're trying to develop specific products to achieve certain financial, like very specific, financial tasks, or, protocols to help manage those things, a lot of users will stare at you and be like, yes, but, when are you going to pay me? When do I get my airdrop? That kind of thing. And so I think that there, similarly to how, there's a political process happening within the Ethereum Foundation, in a way that's kind of a reflection of also how I think developers and consumers of blockchains are interacting with each other a little bit. Because I think that we've kind of, in a way, I hope at least, we're at least partly done with that era of endless airdrops and liquidity mining rewards and so on. And so
we're
we're
on to
really trying to
points now.
and points, yeah. And even then, I think that that's fallen out of favor, if not immediately, then eventually. But yeah,
How
and
do you
then
suggest then? Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I'll wait until you're done.
but yeah, that there is also this political tension, I think, between protocol developers and product providers and their consumers, where we're also learning about each other in a slightly more profound way, and both of us are having to sort of adjust each other's expectations as we move forward. And I think that that is the segue into exactly what 21 was saying, right? Learning how to work together is absolutely the theme for the moment. And I think it might take a little while. We're in the ambassador, phase of blockchain development.
I wanted to, well, I had a question for you, Mark, but I'm going to go back to what 21 was saying first. You're saying right now, you go to GitHub and it's copy pasta, and you're talking about working together and things of that sort. Since we're talking about decentralization, and that was one of the core, characteristics that, defining pieces of blockchain at one point, right? And when I say blockchain, I mean crypto just in general, so it was open sourcing, right? And so if we're talking about, you go to GitHub and you see these copy pastas, and we're talking about this more collaborative effort, that kind of brings up another sensitive subject. And I think that was, are we seeing the industry lean away from this sort of open sourcing everything, take it and copy pasta, however you please, to this more collaborative effort where you're not just taking this and forking it and just, running off and deploying your own? Are we seeing that shift in there as well? Not just the decentralization, but also the open sourcing?
I don't know if it's necessarily a shift. I know that,
Or more of an acceptance, maybe?
well, yeah. So there you go. I think being proprietary is starting to be a little bit more understood. Because with great power comes great responsibility. We have a very powerful system. If we say things like replacing traditional finance. That's that's some powerful stuff you're saying there. You know, what I mean, that comes with a level of responsibility. Um, Otherwise, you wouldn't have 13-year-old kids who run communities and then their dog gets kidnapped online, right? There has to be a line drawn, right? So I think that being proprietary and working with builders who you know on the back end is okay. Not necessarily having everything open source, but not necessarily being closed off to collaboration. I'm not saying that you don't have to have a Telegram chat set up, but at least you know who's in that Telegram chat. You know their builders, you know their other founders. You can disclose anything you would like to. I'm very open to that, but putting it on, GitHub and just having it completely out there for everyone to misuse. For some reason, I don't know where the line is in between that. And I'll be completely honest. I
Yeah.
don't know
Or
where the fair
maybe
play
open
is.
source for view, but not for
Right.
the
Or
taking.
or maybe just a certified builders club. I don't know. Maybe something
Yeah.
that we all docs, or maybe we not docs for, but we all just kind of decide together, hey, he's a builder, he's one of us. That's a good guy. He can, you know what I mean? That's cool. We know who's in the space, we know who's not. So I mean, I feel like being able to take such a powerful aspect of blockchain and how to build it and how to misuse it from GitHub is kind of
And
counterproductive in our
sometimes it's
case.
not intentional.
Right, right. And
Sometimes you
very true.
take some
Very true.
code and you make a little bit of a change to it, thinking that you're improving something, and what you've just done was, open up to some sort of
Another
vulnerability, or make yourself susceptible to some sort of an exploit or something of the sort.
mm,
Like, it's not always, malicious,
true. And you can
right?
say the same for innovation. It's done by accident. You know what I mean? So it kind of, and that's why I say I don't know where the fair play line is, and I'm conflicted by it. I wish I had more, but that's just how I feel. I don't, and like I said, it's not keeping it from other projects, and it's not disclosing to the holders. It's more so just the other parts of the web. Like the 13-year-old kids who want to misuse it. We gotta, because that's going to be the first thing that's going to do is start a bad publicity backlash from here to kingdom come. We're gonna be facing that until we start to kind of police our own space, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
be more cautious, before we move forward and say, okay, here's everything transparent. Here's everything. If you're in a holders meeting, okay, cool. But if you're just in a public chat on X, for me, there's no need for that. You should go to the community Discord, Telegram. There's places, and reasons and ways to be very transparent, responsibly, I think. So.
Yeah. Mark, what are your thoughts on the open sourcing?
I've always been critical of open source. I think there are some instances where open source software in general has worked extremely well. There are cases where it hasn't worked at all, or it's like very, very unreliable. Like one of the things that I think is held up in both of those categories simultaneously is like the Linux operating system. So there are some communities, like especially like Debian, is like phenomenally good open source software, and is probably the standard to which all open source projects should be held to. But it has like hundreds of like offshoot projects, and some of them, are just really bad. Erode away some of the quality that the Debian project brings to it, or is mismanaged, or is like poorly supported. And so yeah, I think that in general, open source projects sometimes struggle with management. Someone having to be held accountable for what's happening. I've heard like even people like Jonathan Blow, who's a programmer that I sometimes listen to. He has like these rants on Twitch and things that get posted to YouTube. He's a game developer. He's writing his own programming language to make game development easier. And he's also similarly critical of open source, pointing out that basically the people that do the work are often like they're not paid to do that work, and no one asked them to do it, and so you have this very disorganized state of affairs permanently, and that it does open weaknesses. Like that kind of lack of structure can be abused, and North Korea is abusing it, right? A lot of these open source projects are getting pull requests from North Korean hackers that have injected like malicious code into open source projects. And for a while, this was just speculation. But then, some like very clever critical bugs began to surface last year. That was like absolutely had Project Lazarus's fingerprints all over it. So there are both security issues and I think efficiency issues in how open source stuff is run. Having said that, I think that especially as it pertains to blockchain software and DeFi in particular, um, there is absolutely a reasonable expectation that the people that are using that software should know exactly like what's in it. So, fully verified smart contracts on Etherscan where you can read every single function and audit the thing for yourself should you choose to. So it's difficult to, it's very, very difficult to be critical of that aspect of it. And so I think being, I don't know what a good word for it would be, but maybe something like transparent proprietary, meaning that the source code is published and you can see it and audit it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that anyone has the right to use it, right? That you can still have a license on it that says, even though I'm showing you how this code works and this is important for security purposes, that doesn't give you the right to then copy paste that code and start your own project out of it. And I've struggled with that before. So I said at the beginning of this call, I used to be a research scientist, and proprietary software is like one of the worst things in science. Every single instrument has like its own extremely bespoke software package that produces data files that you need Windows 95 running a very specific version of this software package to ever read again. It's horrible, and like that would definitely benefit from a more open source approach. But at the same time, running those instruments and processing that data, those companies invest millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in developing the theory that runs that software. And so revealing sort of your industry secrets by publishing the code somewhere where someone can easily read it, I understand why they don't want to do it. Like it would be basically gifting secret sauce to your competitors. So there is the conflict is real. I think publishing the code and making people aware that they can audit it for themselves, I have absolutely no contention with. But the risk is that you actually have discovered something potentially important, and by publishing it, you are gifting it away to people in typical open source like MIT style licenses. And so I think that the right balance is something like what Curve Finance has achieved, where they do publish the code and they do show you how it works. But when you read the license, it says like we reserve the right. And I think that that's probably the right level of pragmatism that we should expect from open source projects on blockchains into the future.
We have about 5-10 minutes left, you guys. I want to open it up to both of you. 21, is there anything, you had mentioned a couple of things earlier that you would like to see a shift towards as the industry. Do you want to elaborate on those at all? Is there anything else, that you would like to, maybe bring attention to?
Sure. Interoperability is going to be just being able to work together for once. We've never tried it. Like I said earlier, we use the phrase "we are early" a lot, and then we go and we argue amongst ourselves on crypto Twitter, and there's only 5% of us in the world who are having this conversation. So we are in a corner somewhere talking amongst ourselves. So we've got to start, working together. Whenever you go have this meeting with these Fortune 500 companies, you don't want to bring the feed that we currently see on our crypto Twitter feed. You want to see projects winning together, working together, building together. There's absolutely enough room for everyone at this table. This table is huge. The blockchain table can feed absolutely everyone in this space. There is no need to pull chairs out from one another. You absolutely have my chair, friend. Please join me. Yes, I would love to see that. The building together, the being able to celebrate together, and to move together as a whole entire space, I think is going to be very crucial for not only our longevity, but like I said, we've got a lot of work to do. We've only begun to scratch the data side of blockchain. It's all been monetary. It's all been traditional finance, replication, or dilution. It's only been focused on the money side of blockchain. We've yet to scratch the data, applications, which are in real time. Everything that we're doing now, we're tracing vegetables from the place they were grown to our dinner table. You've got supply and logistics, you've got medical records, you've got real estate, you've got RWA marketplaces, you've got, like I said, just the most valuable real estate right now is digital, and blockchain can move that cheaper, safer, faster than a lot of the traditional systems. That's bullish to me. So I would
Yeah.
absolutely love people to start to work together, and be able to highlight the other things we offer the world outside of just being able to move money around. There's a
And
lot.
really build on those. We see a
Right.
few of
Exactly.
them. I mean, like we're seeing the RWAs come in,
Right.
right? And it's definitely been had much more of a presence, right? Than,
Yes.
I mean, probably the last, what, maybe year and a half, something like that, 2 years, I want to say. I could be off. I mean,
Well,
I
if you
feel like
remember,
yesterday was 2 months ago, so I have no concept. But
and the RWA concept is really, I think it's taken off because it's leaving off where Web3 came in. And remember, we wanted to put the power back in the hands of the people with Web3. Then crypto winter came, Bitcoin hit 16K. It kind of became stagnant. It didn't move forward towards the people anymore. It became a buzzword. So you have things like RWAs that allow people to sell things. eBay meets OpenSea. They're starting to be able to take initiatives again, and I love that. I love that. So I'm hoping that it continues on. We see not only the people get bullish, but the projects and the founders get bullish on building again. And I'm absolutely just I'm looking forward to see what comes from the space as a whole.
it really is great too, like even just the vegetables and things that you had mentioned. Mark, I mean, the whole reason I got into DeFi was because I was so passionate about the actual like real world use case. Yes, it was DeFi, but it wasn't, kind of how you can see DeFi now to a lot of those that are entering the space today. For me, it was much, much different. It was kind of like a lot of what Cello is doing right now, really on the ground in different areas, making this sort of difference and bringing this sort of ability, within reach to a lot of these people. Mark, what were your, anything that you want to add to what 21 was just saying in terms of the data and the interoperability, or any thoughts of your
Yeah.
own you want to add?
I still think DeFi is probably like it is the most obvious use case for a blockchain, right? Like when Bitcoin came out, it was as money, like it didn't have a whole lot of room for for a data layer or anything like that. But I don't think that DeFi should be the only use case for blockchains. And it is, in a way, it is surprising that over the last 5 years, um, how DeFi centric this whole thing still is. Um,
Really, since DeFi summer. Remember DeFi
right.
summer? I mean, and there were different things that we've let go from DeFi summer, but it has had such a strong, like you said, very central to blockchain now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And yeah, so you know, I was at a conference just recently, and someone was asking me like, is it always going to be about alternative currencies and liquidity pools and so on? And I said that there like I have also advised projects that are doing stuff that's like completely unrelated to this. People who are looking to, for example, create a means by which the authenticity of their artwork can be verified by
Mm.
anyone, right? So like if someone is, that conversation was that they have a new aesthetic that they think is going to find like a strong and like reliable market. And obviously they can't sort of patent the style of artwork. And even though it's difficult to replicate, they think the market's going to be large enough that someone's probably going to imitate that artwork or even pretend to be that artist. And they're asking me about how to use the blockchain to, to verify the artworks come from them, or even that they were the originator of, this style of artwork. And I said, yes, absolutely. This is actually something that a public ledger is very, very good at doing. Because you can publish, for example, an image cryptographically signed with a timestamp that no one can argue with. Like it's now incorporated into the Ethereum log, like history log. And so, that's in a way is even better than saying, I filed the patent for this thing on this date. Because, someone could say, oh, someone at the clerk at the patent office changed the date or something like that. On a blockchain, you have like there's no benefit of the doubt. There's no point in contesting it. When it was published, that's when it was published. The person that published it didn't even know what they were really publishing. And if you have the key that produced that digital signature, no one can debate that it was you. Like it's a perfect way to avoid arguments over ownership of like either certain intellectual property, and in this case being the founder of or the creator of a new type of art style. And I think that those kinds of applications don't get a lot of attention, and maybe they should. Like there are so many things that you can do with a blockchain other than send each other tokens, that really should get some more time in the light. What 21 is referring to is security in things like supply chains and that sort of thing. I think that like it's super compelling, but it's also like very like it's very industrialized. Like there are very small swathes of civilization that would even know enough about supply chain security to even care about how that security is arrived at. But I think that there are things that are going to be as like widely understood and immediately applicable as like DeFi was to regular people. Like there's something so like visceral about it that the purpose is like self-evident, and that's why everyone rushed into it. And so while we're looking for like these specific use cases for blockchain that might service certain industries or certain business cases in sort of a like one-to-one fashion, or even one-up what the current alternative to blockchain is, I think that whatever that next big thing is, it will have that same like feel of like personal, like relevance. And the example that I gave with this verification of being the originator of a piece of artwork or something, it's like it's obviously not that, but I feel like it's going to be something in that direction, something where people can stake their claim to something, even if it's not financialized in any way. But we'll see. There are so many things that you can do with a permanent, immutable, and uncontestable ledger that, like I said, it's surprising that over the last 5 years, we haven't seen too much development in that area.
Yeah.
One
Okay,
good
we
thing.
have.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Shannon.
I was just gonna add. I
No,
know
you're fine.
to Mark's claim. One good thing we did see was the state of California did adopt Avalanche recently for the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. So that was kind of cool. I was
That
really
is cool.
excited, but we didn't see a lot of tweets about it. But I was absolutely bullish about that because they went after the data side, and I thought that was from a state level, not federal, but it's something. Definitely was a bullish case. And I
It's
think it's
definitely something.
yeah.
It's not a nothing by any means.
Yeah, that's what kind
It's
of drove
nice
the
to
point home for
see.
me. Like maybe we haven't concentrated on the data side enough. Like maybe I missed something
And
too.
I think too that it takes a minute if you're not in this industry, and you're not here day in and day out, right?
Right.
Especially, I mean, even when you are sometimes, just entering into this and trying to understand it really, and the scope of what it's capable of, right? And how you can apply it. It's going to take a minute. We have about 2 minutes. I do want to give you guys a minute. I know we didn't talk about Chain, we didn't talk about Bancor or Carbon DeFi, but I do want to. If you've attended my calls before, I'm not a shill person, right? We don't do shill hour, but I do want, our listeners, we got to know you guys, let's know a little bit about the projects that you represent as well. 21, can you start us? Just tell us a little bit about PodChain real fast.
Sure, sure. And I'll just give a quick summary.
Yeah.
When I was preaching the interoperability earlier, this is where it comes from. We are a blockchain that actually does away with third-party bridges. We actually made a blockchain that connects to other blockchains. So customly. So we've got Ethereum, Base, Arbitrum, Ethereum, Polygon, BNB, AVAX, Optimism, CeLo, uh, Linear Chain, Crow Chain, and Genosis. And we've also got CeLo, and we've also got Solana. So we are the
Wow.
first. Yeah, we are the first place that you can
I have a
deploy.
cheat sheet too, by the way.
I know I had to look back. I had to look back every day, but yeah, for the builders, it is the first place that you can deploy a single liquidity pool and be accessible on an EVM chain as well as an SVM chain. So we're doing away with third party bridges. If you basically a good example of what we do for the space, if you open up your BNB app, you open up your crypto.com app, you can go to Bitcoin, you can buy, sell, send, swap, receive, right? And you can go to Ethereum instantly, buy, sell, send, swap, receive. You never know that you're going multi-chain on the front end. Your user never knows that. But it's not your keys, not your crypto. We did the same exact freedoms, the same exact interoperabilities, the same exact liberties for the user inside of a DeFi wallet that is gas free on the world's fastest blockchain. That's all we did. So no more fragmented liquidity, no more individual chains for dApps. You're going to have simultaneous users on every chain for just simply doing the work in one place. So we are infinitely scalable. So we are for the builders. We are for L1 protocols. We can work with any and everyone in this space. We can connect with. We've got memes. We've got RWAs. We've got L1 protocols. If you're building, we can help you do it cheaper, safer, faster. We're simply a blockchain solutions company, and blockchain is our utility. That's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you, 21. I've shared both of the links for X,
Thank you
for
so much.
PodChain, and for you personally as
Much
well.
obliged.
So,
thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely. Mark, would you? I know we have maybe a minute left.
Sorry,
but
did I
if
go
you've
over
got
time so
time,
far, Mark?
no. I mean, we're
I was
having
trying to keep it
conversation.
short.
It's fine. I just want Mark to know. I don't know if you guys have anything else scheduled. I know it is top of the hour, and I always feel bad when we go over a little bit. So it's my way of apologizing, really. But I would still like to offer Mark the opportunity to tell us about Bancor and Carbon DeFi.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it short because I do have another call. But yeah, so Bancor is an older project. It invented something called the automated market maker, which it took to market in 2017. And since then, it's iterated on the model somewhat. It developed something called amplified liquidity in 2020. Which was then sort of rebranded as concentrated liquidity by other protocols about a year later. We've also developed something more recently called asymmetric liquidity, which is a way to basically tease apart the bidding and asking prices for liquidity, enabling users to make more specific choices when it comes to contributing liquidity to an automated market maker. On top of that, we have a couple of different things in parallel. The most notable is the arbitrage fastlane, which is a resolver or solver for developed for Carbon, but also connects all liquidity on chain with each other, and so enables DeFi ecosystems to function much better than they would without waiting for arbitrageurs to show up out of their own volition. We have deployed ourselves on Ethereum, on Celo, on Sei, and a few more coming up, and a couple more on the list as well. But we also license the protocol to other developers who have also taken the product with their own branding to places like Base, like Arbitrum, and so on. So yeah, the project is alive and kicking, and actually going really well. And if people would like to investigate some of the data that we're for how the protocol is performing in these various jurisdictions. I encourage you to go to either the June website for Bancor, or you can send a text message to the Bancor Twitter account for more information about where to find these things.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been a really wonderful time. I've genuinely enjoyed the discussion. 21, having you on. I know I've attended your spaces with Mark previously, but to have you both as guests has been wonderful.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you
My
again.
pleasure. And thank you again. And good to see you again, Mark, as well. I appreciate it.
I am also going to post a comment
Pleasure.
we didn't get to underneath our thread, and I'm going to tag you guys because I know that this listener would like to hear your thoughts on this as well. Thank you to everybody who did comment, who tuned in, and we will see you next Wednesday for another Blockchain Banter.
See you later,
guys. We'll see you guys next time.